Good morning, everybody. My name is Orla Clancy, and I am with Creative Europe Desk Ireland. Hi, and this is Rosie. Hi, Rosie.
Hello. I'm from the Creative Europe Desk UK, based in Belfast.
So we are doing this event together, which is really exciting. A few things before we get started, just a few housekeeping things. This webinar is being recorded, so just to let you know. It is also being captioned, so there is closed captioning available. If you click the button on the bottom, that's fine. And also we're going to have Q&A at the end. But instead of using the Q&A feature, you can just use the chat. I think it's more informal, but if a question goes into Q&A, that's okay, we'll catch it. So we'll just go through the running order. And, oh, sorry. Now, so the running order, so it's me and Rosie, first of all, and then we're going to kick off with the case study of Puffin Rock. And we have Gerry from Cartoon Saloon and Fionnuala Deane from Dog Ears. Then we have Jam Media. So we have Mark Cumberton and Richard Gordon from Jam. So in that respect, they both have a company. Jam Media is based in Belfast and also in Dublin. So there'll be interesting examples on how they work cross-border. Whereas in Puffin Rock, it's two separate companies. Dog Ears is based in Northern Ireland, and then Cartoon Saloon is based down south. So, and then we have the Ulster Touring Opera company with David and Nicholas and Tom, and it's a virtual reality project, which is really interesting, and again worked using companies from both sides of the border. And then after that, so we'll have the panel discussion and Q&A then. So if you have any questions, please put them up in chat, but we'll save them all, I think, until the Q&A. So yeah, and then so I'm with Creative Europe. Well, we both are, but for the next program, I don't know if you know, but the current program is being finished. They're 7-year programs, and this year is the last program of last year of the current program. So far, Ireland has gotten out 13 million into Irish companies from the program, which is great. So we're waiting for the new program to be up and running. It's not yet. It's being negotiated still. There are delays, but we're hoping that it's going to be up and running second quarter of next year. So we're talking deadlines probably won't be until around May, June, but we really don't know at the moment. So sign up to our newsletters and you'll find out as soon as we do, really. So yeah, so it's an exciting program because we have 2.2 billion for the next 7 years, and the last 7 years it was 1.46 billion. So there's a big increase for the next program. So once it gets started, it's going to be really exciting. There's going to be a lot more funding available for projects, which is really good. So I'll pass you over to Rosie now, who'll talk about the UK position in this.
Oh, it's really sad to hear you talk about the next programme, Orla.
I know.
We know now that the UK government has decided that the UK won't be participating in Creative Europe after Brexit, which is just now a matter of weeks away. So this means in the future that UK organisations won't be able to apply directly for Creative Europe funding, which is obviously disappointing, but there are quite a few kind of positive silver linings to look at. So first of all, the UK will still be able to engage with a lot of the things that Creative Europe does. For example, it funds a lot of the training labs and markets that take place across Europe, and the UK should be able to participate in most of those, with some kind of caveats and restrictions in certain areas. Also, individuals in Northern Ireland may indeed be Irish passport holders, which means that as an EU citizens, they can still apply for training labs and markets. In terms of the funding, you'd need to be a company though, so there's no way around that, unfortunately. Also, we heard a couple of weeks ago, following the UK government spending review, they've earmarked £7 million for what they're calling the Global Screen Fund. So this is due to be rolled out from April 2021 as a pilot year of the 7 million, and the BFI are delivering this. And it's designed to be a fund for the independent screen sector to compete internationally. So we don't know exactly what that's going to look like or what the exact opportunities will be, but certainly something to keep an eye on to help fund your international work. We also know that the co-production treaties and agreements that exist between the UK and the rest of Europe are not being affected by Brexit, so they will all continue as usual as well, which is brilliant news. And I think just looking at the bigger picture too, you know, aside from what's happening politically with Brexit or Creative Europe, that there are really strong relationships between the UK and the rest of Europe, and there's many long-term partnerships and collaborations that will definitely continue after we leave the EU. And I think that the UK screen sector is still really keen to tell these global stories, and I know that Europe is still really keen to work with the UK, and especially in terms of the UK's kind of talent and crews, which are obviously in really high demand. And particularly when we're looking at Ireland and the north and south, there's so many well-established relationships, which we'll hear a lot about today, and so many opportunities for collaboration, and they're so interlinked in so many different ways that the work will, you know, definitely continue, and collaborations will continue to happen. Which is really why we wanted to do this event today. I mean, Orla and I have collaborated ourselves on various different events while the desks have been in existence, and the desk in Northern Ireland and Ireland have always had like a collaborative, like strong working relationship. And we wanted to take this opportunity to kind of showcase and shine a light on these other types of collaborations, and perhaps show a bit of kind of best practice for the sector and how this works, and have a chat about the different, you know, challenges and benefits that come around because of these cross-border collaborations. Was there anything else, Orla, you wanted to add, or do you think we should move on to our actual?
No, I think that covers it, and I think we'll kick off. So our first case study is on Puffin Rock. So we have Gerry Shirren from Cartoon Saloon and Fionnuala Deane joining us. So hi, Gerry. There's Fionnuala. Hi. So we will disappear and pass it over to you guys to continue from here. Okay. See you in a bit.
Okay. Thanks very much, Orla and Rosie, and thanks for inviting us to participate in the event this morning. So our collaboration with Dog Ears really goes back quite a while now, and it was nice in looking at this to go back over the history again, and to reflect on the history and how it all began, because our work on Puffin Rock, and Puffin Rock is our preschool TV series that was conceived out of an idea that Tom Moore, one of the Cartoon Saloon founders, had, and it was on a holiday, sort of post Secret of Kells, in development in Song of the Sea, holiday down in Kerry, looking out at the Skelligs, and was watching puffins, and really are quite unique creatures, just because because of the color, because they're birds that live in burrows and mate for life, and the whole colorful story about them, which he thought would be great for as a concept for a series. And we started to develop that, and in the early development, conceived of a TV series, but really we were having quite a bit of difficulty getting traction for the series. And you think that everything magically happens when you look back on it, but that wasn't the case. Or it really wasn't the case at all. And we had developed a version of a series that really wasn't working, and for whatever reason. And Paul Young had known Laura Campbell, one of the founders of Dog Ears, started the company with Fionnuala and Jackie and John, and had known Laura from her time at E1, where she was head of development in the UK, and there with E1 and Contender, and talked to her about the series. And Laura at this time was moving on to the new Dog Ears setup, and discussed the idea of really developing a storybook, an illustrated picture book first, and an app, which were obviously something new at the time, and see if that would kickstart the series. And really that was our introduction to Dog Ears. We met Laura and Fionnuala and John and Jackie then for the first time, and that was probably back in, I don't know, 2011 or something, Mm-hmm. I know it was before my start with Cartoon Saloon, which was in 2012, and we were already trying to put together the whole project at that stage. And we had decided, maybe foolishly or to self-publish a picture book, and that was really where the collaboration with Dog Ears really got traction, because let Fionnuala explain on this background, but they had some expertise and experience and plans in this area, and we thought they were great, so we all jumped in together. So okay. Let Fionnuala take it from there through the next steps. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Gerry. So yeah, we set up our company in 2010. So the initial idea of setting up Dog Ears was that we were going to be a publishing company for children's books. That was our starting point. And that incidentally is where our name comes from. Dog Ears is a reference to, you know, dog-eared, well-loved, well-thumbed pages of books. So when we started talking to Cartoon Saloon, we were excited to take a look at the gorgeous Puffin Rock project. Laura and Paul had a previous relationship, as Gerry said, and whenever we set up, we thought, well, what are we going to publish? What are going to be our projects? So we were delighted whenever they agreed to let us have a look at it. And we thought instantly it would just make a beautiful picture book, especially for preschoolers. So we agreed really quite quickly that we would put together the book, and we would use the fantastic artists at Cartoon Saloon to design the concept and design the spreads. Special mention here to Lily Bernard, who took the creative lead on the visuals for the storybook. So at Dog Ears, we agreed that we would write and design, print and distribute the book ourselves for a few reasons, really. As a proof of concept, was the idea going to work? Did children react to the story and the designs? And we also thought we were being really, really smart, that we would have a kind of pitching tool that we could share for other markets. And that hopefully we were also going to try and have a revenue source coming from the book at the same time, that we would actually be making a bit of money for us. And in Dog Ears, simultaneously, we were exploring the idea of developing across platforms. We had just published the first children's interactive book app from Ireland at the time, whenever apps were dead trendy. This is a long time ago. And with another project called Miss Rosie Red, and it had enjoyed significant success, where it was in the top 50 book apps on iTunes for over a year. So this gave us confidence to think about approaching all of our concepts in a different way, as brands rather than just as books. So we agreed that the book and the book app should be made simultaneously for Puffin Rock. And we were in the process of doing this, and we were really, really busy doing this. And I remember John McDade self-taught himself how to code to make the app. So we were beavering away, and that summer we went to the Children's Media Conference in Sheffield. And we pitched the idea of the book and the app to Eric Wang, who was the acquisitions person for Penguin at the time. And his immediate interest and pretty visceral response changed all of our fates. The fate of Puffin Rock, and certainly the direction of our companies for the next, 8 years and counting. Eric loved the designs, he loved the colorways, he loved the gentle preschool tone of this and story of the concept. And I also thought that it could represent and possibly rejuvenate the Puffin imprint from the Penguin collection. So weirdly, at the time for us, he asked us not to release our own book, not to publish it. And there was literally 5,000 copies on a slow boat from China at the time, which we were waiting to take delivery of. So we agreed not to publish the book and not to publish our app, which seemed counterintuitive, but was actually the better thing to do long term. And so that summer we began discussions with Penguin about them becoming our publishing partner, and then becoming an equity investor, and furthermore an investor in the potential TV series. And it was at this point between ourselves and Cartoon Saloon that we agreed to really go for it and see if we could get the finance put together for the full series. It was at that point then that we started pitching the project together. We pitched together a cartoon forum, also with Penguin on the panel at that time. We pitched together Mick Junior at Cannes and later at Kids Screen. And in a string of lovely events, what it feels like now in retrospect, it seemed that everybody liked the show, liked the idea, liked the concept, and quite comfortably everybody agreed to give us their money, which was fantastic. And I know now, of course, that this rarely happens so easily, but at the time it all felt quite straightforward. So for us as a company, we were less than 3 years old. We had developed from seeing ourselves as an independent publishing company to now setting up an animation studio quite quickly. And throughout this whole process, Cartoon Saloon had brought us along with them, helped us to understand the financial structures of production, the legals, the production pipeline, basically everything. I remember one of your first visits up to Gerry, in our very modest first office studio. Gerry said, you know, like, it's not rocket science. You know, it's not. We're setting up animation production, and all we need to do is find the artists and give them the tools, and we'll show you how to do it. So it was from that very steady and understated but a common sense that we've built a solid partnership based on sharing and openness, and we're now working on our 4th co-production together, which seems incredible. So for Puffin Rock, the original broadcasters were RTE, Nickelodeon, and by December 2012, we were able to close finance with a cocktail of financiers and agencies on a cross-border basis, including Northern Ireland Screen Ireland, Penguin, RTE, and we could utilise both sets of tax credits, Section 481 and the UK tax credit up in the north. All right, Gerry, do you want to go?
Yeah, thanks, Fionnuala. And another thing that was important in the development at this stage, the guys in Dog Ears and Laura and Fionnuala had another contact in Helen Blaney, who was previously head of sales at a couple of different UK companies. Most recently, at the time we were talking to her, she had been at Cake as head of sales there, and so we and Helen and Laura and Fionnuala were all good friends together, and so we said we'd start a relationship with Helen where we retained her as a sales consultant. So we had no sales company, so we were going to do it all ourselves in a way that would give us really a whole lot more control over what was going to happen the property out in the market, and that and Penguin were all very supportive of this as well, which was all going a bit against the grain, and then that step allowed us to really exploit our own all our own contacts and networks, and through those we met obviously the broadcasters that took the series on board first, but then with Netflix, and we had a chance meeting first with Tamara Rothenberg at Netflix. We passed that contact. She was very, very keen on the series, really loved it. She showed the trailer and with her young toddler son at the time, and next day we passed that on to Helen, and Helen then eventually concluded the agreement, and that really put Puffin Rock worldwide more or less immediately, although we were only starting series 1, and the next thing was that Netflix wanted a second season, and luckily Nickelodeon and all the other partners on board wanted to buy into a second season as well. So really we were taken off then at the beginning of production on season 1, knowing that we had a really long road ahead of us, with 2 seasons to produce and develop, and also that we had agreed, something we weren't very sure about at the beginning, but that we would do all the foreign language dubs for Netflix, so that we'd own those and then be able to exploit them in second windows, and after the Netflix exclusivity expired, and we exploited them here, and we'd have them available for airlines, and Netflix we found to be a very cooperative partner. Really, they were really just interested in what they like to do and what was important for them, and let us have quite a bit of freedom, which then led on to Netflix not being able to release in China, which was sort of another big step along the way of the sort of Puffin Rock story, because Netflix obviously had, at that stage, early days, had plans to launch in China, but they were obviously refused permission, but they had done, and we had together paid for the Chinese dub. So, and I had been traveling over and back to China quite a bit at that stage. We got distribution for the Sun and the Sea feature film, and beginning to meet parties over there, and found our partner there, CMP, who's really very, very interested in Puffin Rock. And we talked to Netflix about it and said, listen, you're not going to be able to release it anytime soon at all. So can we just go ahead? And they said, yeah, fine. And we sold it to Tencent in China for season 1 as soon as it was finished. And it took off like gangbusters, you know. It was just hard to quantify really what was just the impression that it made immediately in that market. You know, we could see with information they were sharing with us about how the volume of streams, but it had clocked up about 50 million streams in the first 3 or 4 weeks, and then topped out at about 150 million after 6 months, and that really cemented our relationship with CMP, our local partner there, and brought us back then to them with Cartoon Saloon for the release of Breadwinner, but then also started a discussion about the potential of more Puffin Rock content. And then we started working on the Puffin Rock feature film with the script and development. So, and I'd like to, Fionnuala, better go back to you there and let you
okay.
go back with Sarah.
So in terms of, maybe I'll just go a wee step back, just in terms of actual co-production and how we've split that out over the years across the productions on season 1 and season 2 of Puffin Rock. We basically shared across different departments, but this was generally the split, that Cartoon Saloon took the lead on art direction, design, character designs, backgrounds, did a portion of the animation and handled the post-production. Whereas in Dog Ears, we handled the scripting, voices, voice cast, records, music, storyboards, and the other half of the animation. And that seemed to work really well, that I think we were both playing, to our strengths in the different areas, particularly for Cartoon Saloon to take the lead on the art direction and stuff. And for both seasons, it was directed by Maurice Joyce, who was really great for the team and seemed to spend most of his time in the car every 6 weeks up and down the road between Derry and Kilkenny, making sure that everything was okay and that the team were both happy. And another big moment, I think, in terms of the production for Puffin Rock was whenever Paul Young was able to secure getting Chris O'Dowd as a narrator. I think that was a big moment for the show as well. And we also took a risk. We tried an interesting thing, and that we convinced the Ulster Orchestra to let us record them, basically recording a full orchestral score for our series. We have an incredible composer called Einar Tansberg, who's from Iceland, who the world of Puffin Rock is really lush, and we decided to really try and make this an asset. And we managed to negotiate that the Ulster Orchestra would make themselves available for us exclusively for 2 days, and went into the BBC studios in Belfast and recorded them there. So that was a first, I think, for them and for us as well, certainly. And for the film with CMP, it's a 3-way split this time. So we're basically sharing the same areas again, but with some animation happening with CMP as well in Tianjin in China. So what do we see? I suppose the last stage in terms of the last thing to talk about in terms of our relationship with Cartoon Saloon is that it's ongoing. We are working on, as I said, a 4th project, We, as well as sharing projects over the years, we've shared people a lot, where people seem to move quite fluidly between Gerry and Kilkenny. And one of those people is animator Donald Mangan, who was a lead animator and based in Derry and Dog Ears for Series 1 and Series 2. And whenever we got to know Donald, it became clear that he was more than just an animator. He was a creator, a keen illustrator, and wanted to develop his ideas for books and TV series and across different areas. So we asked Donald if he'd like us to help him develop some of his ideas. And we did. This was probably about 2015-16. And we were able to utilise support here under Northern Ireland Screen's Creative Animation Scheme. We made a short trailer and a Bible for his idea. Then we later applied to Creative Europe for Slate funding, which we got. And Donald's project was one of our projects there that was supported, which was fantastic. And then Donald moved back to Kilkenny to work on, I think it was Pete the Cat at the time, Gerry. Yeah. And at the time we thought, this looks like this is going to be a gorgeous new show. And for us, it just became a really obvious thing to do, was to say to Gerry and to the guys, look, would you be interested in co-developing and hopefully co-producing this new show again? So whenever Donald moved back down to Kilkenny, do you want to talk about what you did then, Gerry, from your side?
Yeah, well, the great thing about bringing Donald back, and this is, I don't know, is it okay to talk about this, but it's, you know, it was great for when Donald was in Derry. He was obviously the basis of applications for funding in Northern Ireland, and then we did the very same with Screen Ireland, who gave us more funding for Donald and the development of the project.
Yeah.
On our side, which was great. And then we just we developed and started pitching the project, and because in the relationship that we were working with Dog Ears, we went out together to the markets all the time. So we go to Kids Green together, or we go to it together, because we weren't using any other sales company, and we were just pitching these projects together. And with this project, we did pitch it, and it was picked up. And in one of those really once in a lifetime, I guess, happening that happened twice for us, the people who picked it up wanted a second season. So now we've started production on the show of 2 seasons. So again, in a bit of the same way of Puffin Rock. So it's sort of that lucky charm of working with Dog Ears, that we're setting out on a 2-season project that's going to be in production in both studios now for the next 2.5 years or so. And it's just kicked off.
All right, so I think whenever we were preparing for this chat, we were talking about, you know, our partnership is very much still alive. Puffin Rock is still very much so alive, and hopefully the film will be completed and ready for release next year at some point, whenever cinemas are back and active again. But I think our partnership is based on a number of different things, but there's a lot of benefits on it. You know, there's obviously the 2 tax breaks, the 2 state screen agencies, but we are also aware that we can share talent. There's a wider pool of talent. We can share the work and share the responsibility. And there's big benefits that there's no time difference in terms of co-production. There's no language difference. And if there are any major dramas, we can get together really quite quickly. Within a few hours, we can go and have a conversation together. So, yeah, I think that's about everything I wanted to say. You okay with that, Gerry?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's, thank you so much for that. I think it's very interesting that how, you know, it sounds like a perfect co-production relationship, and you seem to utilize, like, not only sharing staff, but you know, you've split the division of work perfectly as well, which I think might be difficult in other co-production scenarios. And also, of course, the access to funding, which is key. I mean, you know, that's why it's there, so it's important that people should use it. So thank you very much. We will see you guys later in the chat afterwards, and we'll just bring on Mark and Richard now. So Mark Cumberton and Richard Gordon are with Jam Media, and they're coming on screen shortly. Here we go. And Jam Media are an animation company who have, hi guys, Jam Media are an animation company and are based in Dublin, and they've also opened an office in Belfast. So this is a different example of how the collaboration goes across borders. So I will hand it over to you guys.
Thanks, Orla. So yeah, I suppose as you just said, you know, first of all, thanks for inviting us to the event today, and we're very happy to be part of it. As we've been working with Creative Europe for some years now. I suppose, yeah, slightly different than the guys in Cartoon Saloon and Dog Ears. Theirs was a case study. Ours is, I suppose, more about how Jam Media is set up to expand and grow the company. You know, I suppose, firstly, we kind of we did collaborations between ourselves and North and South, and then I suppose how we've expanded the company since then. A little history for those who don't know about Jam. We started in Dublin in around 2002. It was 3 founders, John Royce, Alan Shannon and myself. John's our CEO. Myself and Alan I run operations, Alan runs creative. So I suppose we've been going since about 2002. And then about 7 years ago, we decided we needed to expand the company. We'd worked with some companies abroad. We'd given service work out to companies in Canada and the UK. And we decided that we'd like, I suppose, a bit more control over our own productions. And we decided that we needed to expand, which I suppose we looked around various territories, Canada, UK, Scotland, you know, abroad, and just finally kind of, we looked at Northern Ireland, and we decided that that was the best fit for a lot of the reasons that Gerry and Fionnuala in Dog Ears kind of, I suppose, touched on. You know, just at the end there, they touched on about, you know, same language, same time zone, you know, relatively close. You hop in a car and be up in Belfast in like an hour and a half, or an hour 50 if you're keeping within speed limits. So, you know, we decided to do that. And I suppose talking about control over our own productions, it really started, as I said, back in about 2013, and we were working on our show with the BBC called Roy, and it was season 3 and 4. So we really felt we needed to kind of have the final look and the final visual representation of Roy on screen, and wanted control over that. And as a result, we ended up sort of doing a lot of the work ourselves, even though we'd handed a lot of work out service-wise, but we weren't all that happy with it. So we decided to set up our own VFX production team up in Belfast. And that's where it started, really. We went from there and we started going through all the various departments, right from animation right out to final picture. And it just gave us that ability to really, you know, have control over the productions, but also on a bigger sense, it gave us the ability to separate development from production, which are very different processes. You know, you have a team working in development in the same studio as a team who's working on production, and they're working you know, one is working at a much slower pace, say development, for example, and they get the pondering time and the thinking time and coming up with concepts, where production is much more, okay, you know, the lights are on, the meter's ticking, and it's like we to get within a very tight schedule and get out a lot of episodes, a lot of volume. I suppose we went through a bunch of questions with the guys before we started this, and we're kind of gonna go stick with that. You know, how we set up in Belfast was the first one. Was it easy? And how much support did we get, and that kind of thing. So maybe I'll hand you over to Richard a bit, and Richard can give you a little history on it.
Yeah, so so just to introduce myself, I run our Belfast studio here. We set up here 2013, like Mark said. The guys were kind of looking to expand, and it made sense. Because obviously you have the UK presence, and you have the advantages of tax credits and that kind of thing. But ultimately, it was about, like Mark said, control over the shows, while being able to collaborate. So setting up here was, I think, it went relatively smooth. We got city centre premises. We we have a good setup, and we were able to, you know, get the technology up set up. So one of the big things for us was Invest in I. When we started out, were very helpful in helping us set up here, and similar to Enterprise Ireland, in the south, when there's a new business wanting to come here or wanting to set up here, Enterprise or Invest in I do help out and have funding schemes and sort of get you off the ground. In addition to that, then Northern Ireland Screen, we're based up here, and again, like Screen Ireland in the south, have very good funding opportunities, and it made sense then when we were looking at ROI, the incentives that we could bring towards ROI from them, even without the tax credit at that stage, it made sense to set up here. So we set up here with around 20-25 desks, and sort of over the last 7 years, which is quite a long time, we've got up to around 80 plus people in the studio, so it's went quite busy, and it has sort of been successful in that way. I mean, like, going back to was it easy? It's not easy. Like, you need to be very organized to set up a new studio, full stop. But doing it in a different country, I think one of the things that you have to get right is get the people on the ground right. And that is one of the things that creatively, especially, the guys brought some of the experienced heads up here, and they've stayed here since. So we have a director here who's very experienced, who worked with the guys on shows right back in the noughties. So we set up with the right sort of crew, and really from there on in, it was about organising and setting up like you would anywhere else. But I suppose me being from here is probably an advantage, and obviously having that set up where I come from a background where I understand applying for money and that kind of thing. So we were quite well set up there. And we're still here. I suppose working, how it went in the last sort of 7 years. Hopefully for Mark as well as me, it's went pretty well. We have had that ability to control the shows and the quality of shows. And one of the things that we've done quite well, like Mark said, is split out development and production, but also split out the departments quite well. Like, generally, we would take a lot of the heavy lifting parts of production. We'd take animation, VFX, composite. Bits of our department, bits would be done in the south. And then development-wise, we have done most of our development in the south, although I suppose one of the advantages of being over the two territories is that we have a bigger pool of talent, and similarly to the guys were saying there, like there's people who come through in the studios and are working in development and their own ideas, and it's exciting that way. One of the things that sort of helps us make it work would be sort of chatting on a daily basis. Obviously, working from home nowadays, everyone's on Zoom. Mark and I have been doing that for 7 years. We'd be up and down in the studios together, but ultimately there is a lot. We would have used Google Hangouts an awful lot to just chat. We would have chatted 3 or 4 times a day before this, so it hasn't really changed in that respect. Just obviously working from home is a little bit different than in the studio. Yeah, so like work split wise, Mark, do you want to kick in?
Yeah, I suppose we touched on a lot of these points, or you touched on Rich, and they cross over. Just to go back to the working from home and the work split, it has been hugely advantageous. I mean, we've taken on some new projects. We've completed a project, first of all, when it came to the pandemic rolled in sort of March. We were finishing out our project Jesse and Nessie for Amazon at the time, which had a couple of months left to go. So there was a huge shift required, as every company here will know, to shift over to getting employees and crew working from home and then communicating from home. But as Richard said, I think the advantage we had, if it can be described as an advantage, is that we've been doing it for a long time anyway. So the communication was, as in every business, is hugely important, and that was kind of set up for us. So we had a bit of an advantage. We were able to bring the train into the station, because it was really the last couple of months of the production. Starting a new production of that scale may have been a different result, but I think we were bringing the train into the station on time, and it was rolling in. All we did was keep it going. But we also have started a couple of new productions. We've done 2 short films of late, both kind of very much collaborations between North and South. We did The Voyage for RTE, which was the Christy Moore song, and we just recently completed one of the Christmas specials for RTE. We're developing various projects, but we're also working on a feature film. I can't really get into it too much, but working on a co-production, European co-production. So we'll be using the same sort of setups between North and South. But as Richard touched on as well, whatever it makes sense. I mean, very broadly speaking, as Richard touched on, was development happens in Dublin with some pre-production and there's some designs, and production tends to happen up in Belfast. But there have been crossover. We do encourage the crew to bring up development ideas, and some of those are now being developed into ideas. We also run development from Animation Dingle, as we've touched on before, but it's whatever it makes sense to do it. So that's the advantage, where we set up initially for development in Dublin, production in Belfast, whatever works in each of those territories. Work split was, you know, I think we kind of covered that, Rich. Work split, right? Development and production. But what also, I suppose, with the feature, we also do co-production work with other companies, and also we provide service facilities for other companies. So that's a new area of expansion for us. I mean, ultimately, going up to Belfast was growing the company, expanding the business, and we did that in the first stage with our own productions, but now extending that into other people's productions.
One of the things, I suppose, between the 2 companies is that it is, although we work in different jurisdictions, we do try and keep it as one company. So even though from a service side of things it would be more Belfast orientated, we certainly mix in the Dublin side too, and that's kind of, I suppose, down to the, you know, 1, using the talent we've got, but 2, the taking advantage of the tax credits, which the guys touched on there. But ultimately, by having a studio in both jurisdictions, we have the ability to claim the full tax credits at 32% in Ireland and 25% in the UK on the spends in each territory. So there's advantages of those tax credits. The UK one, you have a used and consumed rule. So if we were doing a collaboration and we had storyboards coming from the US or wherever, they can go through the UK company and attract the UK tax credit, whereas you couldn't do the same in Ireland. But then on the Irish side, there's things like development, which is a much more straightforward thing to prove that development is part of a production, whereas in the UK, you might not have, you might not be able to do that. It's kind of part of it. The other side of, I suppose, the other big advantage is, like we said, Northern Ireland Screen and Screen Ireland both being here. Similar to the guys in Dog Ears and Cartoon Saloon, we would get development money from both Northern Ireland Screen and Screen Ireland for certain projects, but for production side of things, we usually would be partnering up with both, and it's good in that, like, there is a match funding sort of mentality and a collaborative mentality with those guys as well. So one of the good advantages in Northern Ireland is obviously we're a small country, it's a small setup in Northern Ireland Screen, and we have a very good relationship with them, and it is a case of you can pick up the phone and ask the questions that you like to ask when you're going to apply for something. So it's handy that way. The other massive advantage, I suppose, for us, Mark, would be like the talent base, and again, the guys touched on it, but ultimately you're not excluding the talent base. Dublin over the last sort of 10 years has become quite busy. I mean, you've obviously got Brown Bag and Cartoon Saloon down in Letterkenny, and Kilkenny. But like there's a lot of competition down there. It's sort of made it difficult to get talent down there at times, whereas we've sort of been able to cast the net larger. And one of the good advantages for people coming to Northern Ireland when coming to Belfast is the cost base here isn't the same. Our rental market, etc., is quite a bit cheaper than sort of a lot of places in the UK and Dublin as well. So it's one of those advantages that we certainly take advantage of, and why we sort of crew up heavier up here than in the south.
And there's good relationships between the colleges as well up there, Rich, as well, right?
Yeah, we have good relationships with the colleges here. We usually take graduates on. We do the same in the south. I mean, I think we mirror in many ways the practices and sort of the ethos in the studios. It is sort of work with the colleges. It's work with funding bodies. It's the same thing. The difficult part for anyone thinking of doing it is kind of just getting the structure right, and even going into an unofficial co-production between ourselves. We have to get the legal structure right. There is a bit more admin involved in what we do. Certainly setting up different companies and bank accounts and legals across 2 jurisdictions. So it's not all benefits. There is that side of it, which is certainly for Mark and I, it creates a lot of work, but it is worth it for the benefit.
So just, I suppose, finish up on advice, Richard, where we say communication, as we touched on, is key, and daily communication, as you spoke about, is very important. Good people on the ground, you spoke about as well, and the right people to lead the team up there in that territory. And then there was 2 of the points, Rich, good legals.
Good legals and good accountants are kind of something that you really need to focus on. If you're going to start messing about between 2 jurisdictions, you need to make sure the setup's right, because if that setup's not right from the start, you could lose all your funding. And aside from that, then the accountants as well, just to give you the actual what belongs to what territory and sort of keep you right. So it is worth paying for those legal and accountancy services if you're thinking of doing it. And then the other thing really is just bear in mind the costs. If you're thinking of setting up a studio, it's not as straightforward as just setting up in someone's house and yada yada. You've got to set up a network. You've got to have something that works between the 2 studios. IT's got to be strong, and then the capital costs of setting up obviously would be fairly significant. But generally, with Brexit looming as well, which I'm sure we'll talk about in the Q&A, but it's one of the questions we get asked a lot is does Brexit impact? Not really, no. We continue doing what we're doing. We're obviously it's a bit of a hindrance, but it's not going to stop us collaborating, and we have no intention of moving where we are.
That's great to hear, and what's good advice for people who are thinking about expanding into different territories as well. And really interesting to hear the similarities between you guys and our previous case study as well, and like the managing those good relationships and how you split the workload, and just the ease of having a quick road between the 2 places that you're working on as well. So I think we'll move on to our next case study now. So thanks a lot. We'll welcome you back in our Q&A in a little bit. Thanks, guys. So next, we're going to be hearing about Ulster Touring Opera from Dafydd, Tom and Nico. Thanks a lot for joining us. These guys have been working on a really interesting AR, VR project with Ulster Touring Opera. So yeah, work away. Looking forward to hearing more.
Thanks very much, Rosie, and thanks to you and to Orla for inviting us here today. Really appreciate that. My name's Dafydd Hall Williams. I'm the founder and artistic director of Ulster Touring Opera. I've worked in opera as a director and producer for the last 8 years with companies like Welsh National Opera, Wexford Festival Opera and Northern Ireland Opera. And I'm going to ask my colleagues Nico and Tom just to introduce themselves briefly now. Suppose starting with Tom.
Yeah, so I'm Tom Houston. I'm chief executive of a company called Sentireal. We develop bespoke augmented reality and virtual reality applications, primarily for training, but also for simulations and obviously for things like what David's talking about.
Cool. And can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm Nico, Director of Business Development at Volograms. We are a Dublin-based startup, and we are developing cutting-edge technology to bring real people into immersive media. I think this is all going to make more sense after Dav's presentation.
Great. Thanks very much, both. So hopefully the presentation will start now. So great. Well, today we'll look at our project as another case study in cross-border immersive collaboration in the arts. So, Ulster Touring Opera was set up in 2019 and is based in Belfast. Our mission is to increase access to opera across Ulster through both cross-border touring regularly and through immersive technology. The province of Ulster is made up of 9 counties, 6 of which are Northern Ireland and 3, Monaghan, Cavan and Donegal, are in the Republic of Ireland. The scope of our company is to create a regulatory network of venues across the 9 counties of Ulster, as well as developing immersive opera experiences for audiences on the island of Ireland and beyond. We see both physical touring and immersive technology work as 2 points on the same spectrum of sharing our art form with new and existing audiences. In January 2020, we developed a proposal with our partners Volograms and Sentireal for the Arts Council of Northern Ireland's Creative Industries Seed Fund. The funding was supported by Future Screens NI and Digital Catapult NI, as well as the Arts Council, and was designed to encourage cross-sectoral collaboration to drive innovation in technologies and create new products, services, and experiences and content. Our project is attempting to address some significant challenges which face opera and immersive technology at the moment. Opera has always struggled with the preconception that it is elitist, and this prevents people from enjoying the transformative power of the art form. While there have been some works of very high standard presented on occasion to local audiences, there's been a lack of regular provision across the breadth of the province, and so many audiences are unfamiliar with the art form. It is vital that we grow our audience for opera and make sure that the future audiences are as diverse and inclusive as possible. UTO will tour to local venues extensively in the future. However, we cannot reach all of the areas of the province in a single tour. And so how can opera reach people even further afield? And theatre has always adapted to new technologies. It has constantly been at the forefront of pushing the boundaries of what is possible, with the potential for immersive technologies being explored across the globe in a vast range of sectors. It's important that opera is also pushing the boundaries of what this exciting technology is capable of in order to explore and develop our art form. While on the one hand, it's a fun exploration of what's possible through immersive technology, it also raises important questions about viewership explored in Walter Benjamin's essay, The Work of Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction. Benjamin states that the artistic performance of a stage actor is definitely presented to the public by the actor in person. That of a screen actor, however, is presented by the camera. The camera that presents the performance of the film actor to the public need not respect the performance as an integral whole. The audience's identification with the actor is really an identification with the camera. Consequently, the audience takes the position of the camera, and Benjamin suggests that this approach does not expose authentic artistic values. However, through immersive technology, such as augmented reality, we want to explore whether it's possible to present a digitally reproduced performance while still presenting the performance as an integral whole. As this project began in January, we had no idea that within a few months, theatres and opera houses across the world would have to shut their doors. And so a new challenge emerged for our project. Our project is designed to create an augmented reality experience based on the final moments of Don Giovanni's life in Mozart's famous opera. The scene will be brought to life in a person's living room using smartphone technology, with their home becoming the set for the opera. So that we found that there was scope within our project to also explore how opera can exist in a world without opera houses. As this is a session on cross-border collaboration and immersive technology, we wanted to show the workflow for this case study on a map, just so you can follow our progress. Baritone Rosram Gobin was cast in the role of Don Giovanni, and Northern Irish bass Alan Ewing was cast as Commendatore. We wanted the project to be a 5-minute experience, and the scene is around 7 minutes long in the opera, and also includes a third character, Don Giovanni's servant Leporello. We commissioned a new piano reduction of the scene to 5 minutes and cut Paul Leporello out of the scene. On the 22nd of September this year, following all government guidelines, we held an audio recording of the scene at St. Paul's Church, Knightsbridge in London, when the lifting of COVID restrictions allowed us to use the venue. We recorded the audio in multi-track in case we were able to bring in spatial audio elements to as the project develops. And we also were able to work on the blocking for the scene and film this for reference as we prepare for the volumetric recording. The next phase of the project will take place in Dublin, where we will make a volumetric recording of the performers. Nico will be able to share more detail about the technical aspects of phase 2 after this presentation. However, from a directing perspective, we had to ask the performers to work in a very different way. Because the green screen studio is only large enough for one person to stand in, the performers will have to record their blocking individually. I also direct the postgraduate vocal studies students at Guildhall School of Music and Drama in London, and one of the parts of their training as performers is to listen and react organically to their partners in the scene. But this is not possible when you're in an isolated green screen box. The nature of their movements also had to be more specific, as fast movements are not captured well on the numerous cameras. We're using Laban movement technique in order to steer clear of efforts like flicking and punching, and instead focusing on pressing, ringing, and gliding in order to keep the motions both natural and recordable. Once we've made these volumetric image files, we move to post-production in Belfast. So this will take place in Belfast with Sentireal, bringing together the in order to create the experience. The program will be taught how to recognize certain parts of a room, such as the ceiling, walls, and floor, so the performers appear in the correct place for the scene to begin. Sentireal will also develop an application for mobile phones so we can begin beta testing. So beta testing will take place about 2 months after post-production begins. We will tour the experience to 3 venues, 2 in Northern Ireland and 1 in the Republic of Ireland. And at each venue, we will have 2 handsets, which will already have the experience preloaded onto them. And then venues will invite outreach groups and local audiences to take part in socially distanced beta testing at their venues. And lastly, we'll just talk about some of the remaining challenges for our project as we moved forward through it. The first and probably the most difficult is COVID-19 travel restrictions. So our performers will need to travel from the UK to the Republic of Ireland in order to do an afternoon of filming. However, under the current guidelines, they would have to quarantine. We're just waiting for a travel corridor to open so that we can complete this phase of the project, and we had some good news on that this morning. Digital performer interaction. So as I mentioned, the performers will be filmed individually and brought together digitally. This presents some interesting challenges. For example, for those of you who know the scene, they might wonder how we do the icy handshake between Don Giovanni and the commentatore. And we've had a few solutions, such as a green prop in the filming space, which will allow the performers to reach out and hold the hand of their scene partner. And another example is that I wanted the commendatore to circle Don Giovanni early in the scene, and we had lots of conversations about hiring an omnidirectional treadmill and how we might make this work. But actually, we then decided to just teleport the commendatore around. And this is both much more effective in the scene and is a creative solution to a technical challenge. And lastly, I just wanted to kind of mention spatial audio. Now, while this is not strictly a challenge to the project and was not part of the initial proposal, this is an area we're very keen to explore. This enables the program to imitate wave propagation so that as you move around the performers, the audio experience changes in relation to the virtual objects. If there's scope at the end of the project to bring in some sense of location to the different voices, then this would be a very exciting development. So I'd like to take the opportunity to ask Nico and Tom just to speak about their respective parts in the workflow for this project, and I'll hand over to Nico first.
Great. So just a quick explanation of what we're going to do from a technical perspective. So this multi-camera setup, a small studio that we have in Dublin, actually hosted by Trinity College Dublin, where the company initially spun out from. It's similar to a green screen studio that you might have seen for normal video productions, but this one is 360 greens. So you have walls and ceiling and floor, they're all green, and that enable us to shoot the sequence from all angles with 12 cameras, and then we process that thanks to our algorithms into proper 3D. This is a technique called volumetric capture or volumetric video, and that's actually the output that Tom would use to put together the experience. just a few comments on this. And Daf already commented on the challenges that we have in geographically. From our perspective, I think that actually a great advantage of working across the border in this case is that sometimes it is hard for us as an Irish company to find local partners and companies to source projects from and deliver the projects together. And the good thing about collaborating with Belfast is that there's a amazing ecosystem of VR and AR companies based in the city, and every time that something pops up and we can just knock on someone's door, just as it was said before, 2 hours drive up north, it's a great way of putting projects together and getting things done. So we always look out for these kind of opportunities, and so far this project, I think, is being one of these examples. And leaving aside the challenges of COVID for the London-based singers to come to Dublin, I think that everything so far has been a great experience.
Cheers, Nico. We were actually introduced to Dafydd by Digital Catapult, and I think there's a sense of fear actually when he started to tell us exactly what he wanted to do, because anyone who understands developing augmented reality apps, it's not something you would choose to do. It kind of sounds quite straightforward, but it's actually incredibly difficult to take a fully animated photorealistic character and put that into augmented reality, especially when you're then trying to do that with multiple characters. The thing with the AR is that you actually lose control of how the user consumes the production. So they can actually literally get up and walk around and view the production from pretty much any angle, and that introduces a lot of problems. It also means that a lot of the tricks that we would normally use in virtual reality, where although it looks like a 3D object, effectively what you're looking at is a flat projection almost. We can't do that with augmented reality. So fortunately, our founder, David Traynor, come across Volograms, ironically enough, at another Digital Catapult event sometime earlier. And what Volograms give us is effectively a solid 3D character recording that we can actually use without having to implement massive processing power. So we can actually now deploy something like this on a smartphone instead of a device tethered to a really powerful PC. So it's still not easy, but having partners that are all in the same time zone, speak the same language, allows us to shortcut any of the issues really, really quickly. I think the culture also allows us to ask questions in a way that you might not with someone outside of Ireland. I think that's also a great thing. We've found the cross-border aspect of it pretty seamless, to be honest. And I think one of the other benefits we have, which is Daft's lack of technical knowledge, is actually a really good thing, because he asks for things without seeing any limitations. And that kind of pushes us then to try and push the boundaries a bit. So that's pretty much, that's me. Back to you, Daf.
Thanks very much, both. And once again, thank you to Orla and Rosie for inviting us today.
That was great. Thanks a lot. Such an interesting project, and so different from the other animators have said as well. I think we've got like a bit of time now, so I think we'll just invite everyone back in. Is that, unless there's anything else you want to say, Orla? Or?
No. I think yeah, if everybody's ready to come back in. I think it's very interesting that they are very similar. Like, you've all talked about the fact that it's the same time zone and the same language. It's a huge advantage, whereas you're still getting the co-production advantages as well. So it's an interesting one.
Yeah.
So yeah, if everybody else can.
I think we're waiting for them to turn their cameras on. I have a question to maybe get things started for you, Dafydd. So I know that the company was set up recently as a cross-border touring company. So obviously that has happened after the Brexit vote. So I was just wondering how that affected your decision to do it, and whether that was a concern, or what's the context of that?
Sure. So we set up in 2019. So you're right, it's a fairly new company. One of the advantages of being based in Belfast and touring across border is that we're able to draw upon the funding from both arts councils, so Arts Council Northern Ireland and Arts Council of Ireland. And that's great because we can pitch to them to say, look, you can, the result is greater than the sum of the parts. So you can invest and you get a greater return on your investment because they're coming from two different it's the same product, but you've got two different inputs into it. I think that it's really important to actually get this going now. I'm really keen to make sure that there's a regularity to this and it's kind of ring fenced, because we don't know what's going to happen in the future, obviously. And there are wonderful venues right across, from Letterkenny, Monaghan, in Cavan, and then also within Northern Ireland itself. In terms of our how we set up, now I worked with Northern Ireland Opera before I set up Ulster Touring Opera, so I got to know the kind of landscape on the island before that, and got to know the venues, and so it was really important, they felt, to have this kind of touring network. But also, just one thing I kind of want to mention, which is really exciting, which I only discovered last week at the Beyond conference, was that Professor Frank Lyons at Ulster University mentioned the Screen Media Innovation Lab, which is being set up here, which it sounds an incredible project. It's between 60 and 65 million pounds being put into this pitch to create this innovation lab in Belfast Harbour, which would look at digital production and various ways in which creative industries and film might kind of collaborate. And it's really exciting to see that working up in Northern Ireland.
Wow, that sounds great. I'm just writing that down.
Yes. That was the first thing I heard of it last week. It's amazing.
Brilliant.
That's great. Yeah, the one of you, I mean, a B word, the one thing that's going on at the moment is Brexit. And I think, Rich, you said that it hasn't really affected you guys as much. I mean, yet, but I suppose that one of the areas is that will be affected is staffing. I mean, when it comes to visas, I mean, have you run into difficulties with that already, or are you prepared for that?
Yeah, it's like I've been at quite a few sort of government things where to chat about it, and like certainly for us, we are in the service provision side of things, so we're not as badly hit. That is the first thing to recognise. It isn't as bad as like if you're trading goods at the moment, it's chaos. For us, it's services, so it's not quite the same. The big concern for us is the visa system. Our studio is made up of nationalities from across, like especially Europe, but like beyond. But like we have like French, German, Spanish, Polish, like you name it. Like we've had a lot of different nationalities here, and luckily during production there that they were all able to continue on here, and the UK made it that if you were already here, then you can stay here and there's no issue. But certainly for us crewing up the productions, it is going to be one of the challenges is how quick can those visas be turned around, like how simple a process is it? Because going outside the EU at the moment for talent, for us to be quite honest, is difficult unless you have a big run into production. Like you could be talking 3 months for a visa, so like that kind of system just can't work. That is the one thing we've been pressing at any opportunity we've had to sign on board with the government is that we need that visa system to be quite simplified. Like and from what they're saying, it looks like it might be, but who knows how it's going to be administrated. I mean, it's brand new. Governments are the best at getting things up and running smoothly, and this is a bit of chaos. So yeah, that is the big concern, but we continue on beyond it. I mean, it's part and parcel.
Very good. Has anybody else come up with any challenges pre-Brexit, or is it wait and see, and we'll have the same conversation this time next year, and it might be a different scenario?
Well, we've been looking at the Common Travel Area criteria, so which predates European Union regulations because it's before the UK joined the European Union, and that's really important for us because we're looking to contract singers from the Republic of Ireland and the UK, and that essentially means that, as Richard said, there wouldn't really be much challenge to us because of Brexit, because the contracting of freelancers just in those specific areas would be the same. We're hoping based on the Common Travel Area.
Yeah, that was my understanding as well, but like it's very difficult to actually find proper guidelines on it anywhere. But I thought with the Common Travel Area that north south.
That's correct.
Yeah.
The travel thing. So I think there's an act from the 20s or whatever when looking at exportation that there would be common travel between companies or countries. So that actually does overrule. So there's no issue for us employing Irish talent. It's just going outside that.
Yeah.
man. But bearing in mind, going back to what I said earlier, the talent pool in Ireland is quite small for the amount of companies in our sector anyway working. So we do have to go abroad, but certainly for the guys there, it's a lot handier if you're employing people just on the island.
Yeah,
I suppose part of that is, oh,
sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Gerry.
Yeah, I was going to say, in the relationship that we have between ourselves and dog ears, there's a good deal of flexibility in it. So we swap things around. So, you know, if our work split, say that we were storyboarding, but we're struggling to find the storyboarders, you know, Fionnuala is, you know, has a much bigger pond there to fish into for that. So we can, and we have done as we've gone along, move the work split north or south, depending on where the talent was available.
Based on the needs of the production first, I think is the way we operate, which is, it's a good way to have a partnership that if it's based on the needs of the production rather than our individual company needs, it ultimately means that you produce a better project, a better show. But yeah, Brexit is a nightmare. I'm dreading the whole thing, and I can't even.
I mean, but I think like it speaks to how also like important these north-south relationships are as well. You know, and I think hopefully like with the common travel area and with these kind of established relationships, it won't be too affected.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, you hit the nail on the head there. You talked about established relationships. I think everybody has found that, you know, over the last, you know, 9 months now, I think, with COVID, that established relationships have really built and grown because, you know, we have Zoom and it's been a lot easier. But building those new relationships can be quite tricky. And I think a question has come in about what advice do you have for getting development funding? But also what networking conferences do you recommend in this country other than Animation Dingle for animation? There's Animation Festival in Kilkenny as well. But this is a question that Richard Cross is asking all panelists in regards to their specializations and considering the post-COVID world. And if not Ireland, can you suggest beyond if you can't think of it? Because I know a lot of networking conferences have gone online, but it's still difficult to make those new connections. So if anybody has any advice in that regard.
I would recommend CMC for anyone. I always think it's a great entry level conference in terms of it's not too expensive. You're living here, you know, the registration isn't too crazy, and you get a fantastic, you know, mix of broadcasters, creatives. It's not just all about, you know, some of them are a bit more niche, a bit more production heavy, whereas I think CMC is a great overview of every single aspect from production development right through to sales and networking. So I would say CMC is a good entry point for sure.
I would just add just on the development funding side of things. I mean, if you've got a project which you feel that you want to pursue, like specifically, like don't be shy about reaching out to your screen organisation. For us, it's NI Screen for the South Screen Ireland. Also look at things like the Arts Council. Like there is little pockets of funding, and certainly with the COVID side of things, like there has been more grant money, there's more soft money knocking about. So I suppose I totally agree with Fionnuala in that CMC is one of the best places to go for networking. But if you're looking for specific development funding, don't be shy about reaching out.
Yeah, I agree. I think that both Dingle and CMC should be on everybody's calendar, you know.
I would suggest Future Screens NI in terms of the creative industries. They are kind of the central hub for what's kind of happening there. They have a Future Tuesdays program, so you just drop in for a large Zoom conference every Tuesday, which is great. On the theatre side of things, in terms of having conversations, South, I would recommend Theatre Forum, and in the North, Theatre Dance NI. And also Arts and Business NI are really good at bringing arts organisations together with collaborators North and South.
Brilliant.
I also think that there's a responsibility for investing in Northern Ireland as well, and sometimes people forget about them when they're talking about business setup and getting support for, you know, business activity of any type, and people should definitely try and get some support from them if they can as well.
And Creative Europe, of course, if you're in Ireland too, for development
Yes.
funding.
Yes.
Yeah.
And like I said,
reaching out to the various companies themselves. I mean, you know, we talked about building on established relationships. That can also extend into new relationships. You know, we're always looking for companies that make sense for us to work with. If it makes sense, north or south, we'll do that. So, you know, reach out. If a good idea is a good idea, we can help, or if we can do something together. It might not always work out, but I think it's good for companies to talk.
Yeah, for those that are
Right.
developing TV projects or movie projects, you know, the Creative Europe cartoon movie or cartoon forum, you know, really are events that people should get some experience of, even if that's what's on their agenda, not for the future, but to see how those partnerships develop and work.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think you're right, Gerry. I think Cartoon Forum was actually very well done. A lot of the virtual markets can be a bit strange in this new way we're doing things, but Cartoon Forum kind of stuck with their similar format. You know, we're still pitching, we're still a virtual version of it rather than something new and different. So they did quite a good job.
yeah, it's great to see. I mean, and hopefully, it's impossible to put a timeline on it, but hopefully within the next 6-9 months, that, you know, a lot of the markets, like, there's going to be a lot of hybrid festivals over the next markets over the next year, but hopefully we'll get back to the physical, you know, pints after a pitching session and stuff, so people can actually get back to those ways. And like Rosie was saying, with regard to Creative Europe, I mean, now that there's going to be 2 funds, so there will be, so for those collaborating north and south, you'll be able to apply for the Creative Europe funding down south for companies down south, and for companies up the north now that global fund is up and running now is fantastic, because I think that's only been announced within the last week, so so that's a really good. So there seems to be an awful lot of advantages of working north and south. So
yeah, just as everyone said, I think the common thread is like the access to the different screen agencies, the different funding pots, getting tax relief both sides of the border, all those advantages. And then particularly for north and south, you know, the common shared culture, language, time, all those things seem to be a huge advantage that hopefully people will make the most of, you know.
And hopefully Brexit won't hinder that at all. So which is great. Okay, well, if anybody has any other questions, I think there's no more questions on the chat. So I want to thank you all for coming along this morning. It was great to see you all on this freezing cold Tuesday morning. And this webinar is being recorded, so it will be available on our websites. Yeah, so have a lovely day, and we'll see you all soon. And thanks again.
Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Cheers and bye. Bye.